The wind howled across the lonely prairie that evening, carrying with it the scent of dust, sweat, and the faint promise of rain. But inside the small wooden house at the edge of town, no such promise of relief existed. For Mary Ellen, she stood trembling in front of the cracked mirror nailed to the wall, staring at her own reflection with wide, horrified eyes. The thick chestnut hair that had once cascaded over her shoulders, the very pride of her beauty, lay in broken clumps across the floor like the wreckage of her dignity. Her in-laws had done it out of spite, jealousy, and pure cruelty, gripping her down with iron hands while the cruel shears tore away the last thing that made her feel like a woman. Their voices still echoed in her ears. "You think you're better than us, girl? You'll see how the town looks at you now. You'll learn your place." They had stripped her not just of hair, but of pride, leaving her shamed, broken and shaking, her bare scalp raw beneath the harsh lamplight. Tears burned her cheeks, but even her sobs felt stolen, stifled by the mocking laughter of those who called themselves family. She wanted to run, but where could she go? Alone, shorn, disgraced, what kind of life awaited her beyond that door? Yet fate, as it often does, was already working in silence, preparing a path she could not yet see. At that very hour, across the valley where the fields stretched golden beneath the dying sun, Jacob Turner tightened the reins of his horse and rode toward town. A rancher by trade, hardened by years of toil and solitude, he was a man of broad shoulders, steady eyes, and a reputation that traveled far beyond his land. He wasn't the kind of man who spoke many words, but when he did, people listened. And tonight, though he had no reason to know it yet, destiny was steering him toward Mary Ellen's door. Jacob had come to town with simple intentions, supplies for the ranch, perhaps a word with the blacksmith about a broken shoe, but what he found instead was a crowd of whispers, and a cruel story spreading like wildfire. "Did you hear?" The shopkeeper's wife gasped, her voice half giddy, half scandalized. They shaved her bald, her own kin, right there in the house, left her like some kind of prisoner, can you imagine? She thought she was a lady, but now? Nothing but shame. Jacob listened without meaning to, his jaw tightening, his heart twisting in quiet anger. He had no patience for cruelty, especially the kind disguised as kinship. Though he had no blood tie to Mary Ellen, he had seen her once or twice in town. Gentle eyes, soft smile, a quiet dignity that lingered in the memory longer than beauty alone ever could. And now they had tried to crush that dignity. He didn't know why, but his path was clear. With a quiet nod to himself, Jacob turned his horse toward her house. Inside, Mary Ellen had collapsed to the floor, gathering the fallen strands of her hair into her hands as though she could put them back, as though weaving them together might restore what she had lost. She whispered prayers to God, begged for strength. But every echo of laughter from her in-laws in the next room crushed her pleas. "She ain't worth a dime now," one of them sneered. "No man will look her way. She'll stay right where we keep her." Her heart splintered. Was this her fate, to be bound forever in shame? To be defined not by her spirit, but by the cruel strokes of scissors? Then came the sound, a knock at the door, firm and commanding, silencing the room. Her in-laws exchanged nervous glances, their confidence faltering. When the door creaked open, Jacob Turner filled the threshold like a storm rolling in. His gaze swept the room, taking in the cruel faces, the scattered hair, and finally the trembling woman trying to hide her shame. His chest rose with controlled fury, but his voice, when it came, was steady as steel. "Pack your things," he said, his eyes fixed on Mary Ellen. "You're coming with me." For a moment silence smothered the air. Her in-laws sputtered, rose to protest. "She ain't going nowhere." "She belongs here to us," one of them barked. Jacob stepped forward, the floorboards groaning beneath his boots. "She belongs to no one," he said coldly. "Not to you. Not to your cruelty. Not anymore." His hand reached out, steady and unshaken, toward Mary Ellen. She stared at it, her tears still fresh, her heart thundering in confusion and fear. Could she trust him? Could she trust anyone? Yet there was something in his eyes that made her rise despite her trembling legs, something unyielding, something that promised she would never again be treated like less than she was. She placed her shaking hand in his, and in that instant her life began to change. The in-laws snarled, tried to block the doorway, but Jacob's sheer presence pushed them back. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. His words cut sharper than any blade. "You've had your say. You've done your damage, but this woman walks free tonight." And with that he guided her out, her head bare but lifted higher than it had been an hour before. The night air struck her face like baptism, cold but cleansing. For the first time in weeks, she drew a breath that felt like freedom. Jacob helped her onto his horse, his movements careful, protective, as though shielding her from the eyes of the world. When he swung up behind her and the horse carried them into the darkness, Mary Ellen clung not to fear, but to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against her back. The ride to the ranch was long, the silence broken only by the chirping of crickets and the distant howl of a coyote, yet in that silence something profound stirred between them. Mary Ellen, though still raw from humiliation, felt a strange safety she had never known. Jacob did not pity her, nor did he look at her with disgust or mockery. He looked at her as though she were simply herself, stripped of shame but not of worth. When they reached his ranch, he guided her inside the warm glow of his home. "You'll stay here," he said quietly, setting down a lantern. "No one will touch you, no one will hurt you, and no one will take from you again." Mary Ellen's lips trembled as she whispered, "Why? Why would you do this for me?" Jacob met her eyes, his voice low but unwavering. "Because you deserve better than what they gave you. Because no woman deserves to be broken by the people who should have protected her. And because sometimes it takes just one soul to stand up and say enough." Tears spilled down her cheeks, not of despair but of something fragile, something she hadn't dared to feel in years. Hope. She sank into the chair by the fire, the warmth chasing away the cold of shame, and for the first time since her humiliation, she closed her eyes without fear of what tomorrow would bring. Jacob watched her, his jaw still tight with anger at what she had endured, but his heart steady with the promise that he would see her through it. Whatever battles lay ahead, whether with her in-laws, with the town's cruel whispers, or with the shadows of her own wounded spirit, he would not let her fight them alone. And so in that quiet ranch house beneath the stars, two lives intertwined not by chance but by fate, hers scarred but unbroken, his hardened but gentle. Together they would carve a new story, one where shame had no hold, where cruelty had no throne, and where dignity once stolen could be reborn in the fire of resilience.